He's so mad. He's like, this is the most disgusting question anyone has ever asked. No one has ever asked such a nasty question. They won't even let me have my jet. It's messed up. You don't want me to have nice things. I'm saying it. Indubitably. Very nice. All right. Today, we're going to start talking about Trump's global tariffs being blocked by an American federal judge. More accents today? Thank you. Don't worry, I got you.
Court has blocked his tariffs on China and other countries, ruling that the president had overstepped his authority under the law. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce starts us off. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. And this is a massive blow to the president's trade war. For months, Trump has argued that the world is ripping America off, defiant in his executive authority to impose these staggering tariffs. But now a federal panel says the president is overstepping his authority and that his tariffs are illegal. Overnight, a staggering setback for President Trump's aggressive trade agenda. A panel of judges on the U.S. Court of International Trade blocking most of Trump's sweeping tariffs on China and other trading partners, determining that they are contrary to law. The move effectively bringing Trump's trade war to a screeching halt. In April, the president declared a national emergency to impose his so-called reciprocal tariffs on goods from every country that trades with the U.S. without seeking approval from Congress.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
As markets roiled, Trump defiant.
I know what the hell I'm doing.
But overnight, the federal panel ruling that the law does not authorize the president to use emergency powers to issue tariffs, and that his executive orders exceed any authority granted to the president. The judges appointed by Presidents Reagan, Obama, and Trump also blocking tariffs Trump imposed on China, Mexico, and Canada to combat fentanyl trafficking because they do not deal with the threats described in the president's order. The Trump administration overnight quick to appeal. The White House rebuking the court.
I think the court's coming after our big, beautiful boy that simply wanted to molest the money, and stopping his money molestations is really messed up. The judges that have played a role in blocking this so far, as far as I understand, are Reagan judges, Obama judges, which is, of course, lame. Obviously, Obama is a communist, but also Trump appointees. So it's not like these guys are all woke libtards, okay? Down to the Obabe judge. So they're just saying enough is enough. Your money molestation must stop. And it's really messed up. I was thinking about this. As you guys know, I don't entertain conspiracy theories. I do like conspiracy theories. I like analyzing conspiracy theories, but I'm not like a big conspiracy theorist. Having said that, this has played out so perfectly that it almost feels like a psyop to make it seem like if there was ever an opportunity for real trade protectionism, if there was actually a real socialist in charge, that the court system and all of our legal processes will destroy that, because Donald Trump has gone through this in the most idiotic way possible, that it almost feels like we just wanted to make sure that the judicial process could just like eliminate any kind of initiative from the executive office in the future. Okay, has Hasan talked about the alleged throuple between Stephen Miller, Elon, and Miller's wife? Please stop. I saw that. I saw the first 3 seconds of that on my TikTok For You page and instantly shut off TikTok. I turned my phone off. I was like, nope, too much phone for me. I'm good. What kind of insane things am I signaling to my For You page that it's showing me the most like libbait, blue anon, nonsensical position? Of course, while all this is happening, the Trump administration says it will appeal the tariff ruling. This is from yesterday. A reminder to watch this play out in courts and beware the volatility that surrounds it. Also a reminder that rule of law in American court system as a balance is a huge reason investors flock to the U.S. If there's a perceived breakdown with this issue or others, it would mean a breakdown in confidence of inbound investment. An observation: for the past month or so, I've had CEOs and CIOs of major U.S. and international corporations and investment firms pull up lawsuits, including far outside of tariffs, such as Harvard's, with the briefs saved handy on their cell phones. They're watching for fairness at the end of the day to see that the system holds up. I think a lot of people don't understand how important this is. As someone who grew up in Turkey, let me tell you, okay, there are, at the end of the day, you either need to have an incredibly cheap manufacturing base so that you can offer super profits to multinational corporations like China does, or you have to have an incredibly solid, transparent legal structure so that your investments are kept safe. At least there is some sort of legal restitution that you can get. America offers a court system and a functional, I guess, like judicial utopia in comparison to many other countries. The reason why I'm making this comparison with Turkey is because when I was at Bloomberg in Turkey, Bloomberg Habertürk in Turkey, this was one of the things that came up quite frequently when I think this was like the era of privatization for Erdogan. I mean, there's never not been an era of privatization for Erdogan, but I remember vividly there was one meeting I went to with like MBA students. There's something above an MBA. I forget what it was, but the most important thing that they were talking about, is like, in order to bring in foreign capital into the country, there needs to be some kind of there needs to at least be there needs to be at least like the presence of parity and the presence of fairness, and that when things are done, when business and commerce is done in like very corrupt ways, bribery, or when the government can like seize assets or pick and choose winners in the marketplace aggressively, that actually causes investors to pull out, foreign capital to pull out of the country. If your investments are not protected by at least like some institutions that will at least be as fair as possible, you're going to have a harder time bringing in foreign capital into your country. And the same goes for the United States of America as well. The United States is basically like the one of the greatest examples of this. Now, some people, given how cheap the manufacturing base is in other global South nations, will work around that. India is a great example. Obviously, you know what I mean? Like they just overcome that fear, because the alternative is they get to make so much more. They get to make so much more in the long run, as long as they can keep the hyper exploited workers working in the manufacturing hubs, as opposed to the alternative being in the Western world. So there is a gamble. There is a risk to reward ratio there for a lot of foreign investment. But for the United States of America, we don't have a cheap nor robust manufacturing base. The only thing we have is the courts. The only thing we have is the institutions. So Trump is not only molesting the money directly, but he's also kind of molesting the process. But let's see.
Saying it is not for unelected judges to decide how to properly address a national emergency, adding the administration is committed to using every lever of executive power to address this crisis and restore American greatness. For weeks, the president's on-again, off-again tariffs have caused whiplash on Wall Street, sparking major sell-offs when he issues new threats and rallies when he pulls them back. In the Oval Office yesterday,
I don't think the court socialism thing you mentioned is a conspiracy theory. Is it not true that the American legal system is wrapped around capitalism and would have to be fundamentally changed in many ways for allow for institutional socialistic policies? Yes. That's why I said I'm joking. It almost feels like he's like trying to eradicate any kind of opportunity for a potential like social democratic leadership to come in to make some changes unilaterally from the the executive office. I don't think that's the case anyway, though. All right, let's keep going.
Trump lashing out when a reporter asked about a new term for his turnarounds.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response?
I'm not kidding when I say this. This, I think, originally came from the Financial Times reporting, and Financial Times has been kind of carrying the entirety of Legacy Publishers of the West on his back for the past year and a half. I kind of feel like the taco shit is dangerous, but I would be lying to you if I wasn't excited. If I were to tell you I'm not excited to see where this goes, I'd be lying to you. And I kind of feel like a lot of people that have been, that feel as though they've been over by these systems also want to see how badly Trump can blow this shit up. I'm scared. I'm cautious. I think that it's not good if we had a Great Depression. But also at the same time, don't you kind of want to see where he will take this a little bit? Like there is at least for me, there is this morbid curiosity. And I want to see like, how badly could he molest the money? How badly could he f the bag up? It's almost like I think there are a lot of people who, like deep down inside, there's a lot of people who are like, I kind of want to see where this goes. That's because you're a rich asshole. Yeah, if he f the bag up, he f the bag up for me too. What are you talking about? The rich assholes are the ones who are freaking the f out over Trump's money molestation policies. What do you mean? The rich assholes are literally the people who are like, do not f this up for me. I am making so much money right now. Who do you think is more freaked out? I know everyone is saying that's because you are a rich man, you are privileged, you won't end up in the streets. But like, chatters. I know. That's why I'm saying I'm cautious. That's why I'm saying it's like, that's why I said it's a morbid curiosity. And it's almost like a, what do you call it? It's almost like it's bad. It's like the call of the void. Okay. It's like, when you step next to the ledge and you're like, there's just like a brief moment where you're like, that's crazy. It's the call of the void. So I know it's bad. It's an intrusive thought. It's an intrusive thought. Exactly. But it's funny when people go, you are privileged. But it's like, it's the most profoundly privileged people on the planet that are literally actively trying to stop Trump from the bag up for them. Do you see what I mean? Like on the one hand, I recognize Trump nuking global trade is destructive, as I've covered extensively. On the other hand, there is this like, this system is so fundamentally flawed. On the other hand, there is this like weird little inkling inside of me, this weird little voice that's just, an intrusive thought that I'm being perhaps a little too honest about that goes, how far could he take this? Like, how far? What would he do? What could he get away with? Do you see what I mean? And I think there are a lot more people out there that genuinely feel this way, not recognizing the immediate impact because they're stupid, okay? And not recognizing the damage that this would do to them individually, that are so resentful towards the consolidation of wealth and power, even if they themselves are little capitalists in training, okay? They have the same like Sigma grind set, one day I'm going to be a capital owner, I'm just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire attitude, and yet still they are so angry and so understandably resentful for the consolidation of power and wealth at the tippy top that they are also going, yeah, just f it up a little bit, f it up. This was what I think happened with the first tariff initiative, where there were a lot of dummies that were unironically talking about how this was a great wealth transfer. It wasn't. Money is fake. And he was just removing zeros from the end of it, okay? That's all he was doing. The first tariff initiative, when it first launched, he just wiped trillions of dollars of value out of the American stock market, and it just went nowhere. It's like it just erupted in flame. And yet people were still trying to present it as like a big W. And I think there's a desperation. There's a desperation there. Like people are so angry, so resentful, and so interested in change that they're like, change in any direction is good. The reason why I'm describing this to you is because I need you to understand like what the anger, like what the motives are for people who like Donald Trump, like where this comes from. Like what are the different factors that contribute to his popularity? Because I believe that if we actually fully comprehend what those factors are, we can at least use it to our advantage and hopefully get these people on board and redirect them towards more productive points of anger and resentment. Okay? Anyway, let's continue.
To that.
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask.
He's so mad. He's like, this is the most disgusting. This is the most disgusting. This is the most disgusting question anyone has ever asked. No one has ever asked such a nasty question.
A nasty question like that. It's called negotiation.
The court has now given the administration 10 days to halt these tariffs, and the Justice Department is now appealing, setting up a legal fight that could soon reach the Supreme Court. George.
And Mary, the Washington Post is reporting that this Qatari plane deal, which the Defense Department had said had been finalized, actually hasn't gone through.
Yeah, despite those claims from the Defense Department, the Washington Post is now reporting that the U.S. and Qatar have not actually finalized a deal for the transfer of that.
They won't even let me have my jet. It's messed up. They won't even let me. They won't even let me have my jet. You don't want me to have nice things. They don't. The Democrats hate you and they hate me. They don't want me to have nice things.
That $400 million luxury jet that Trump plans to use as the new Air Force One before being transferred to his presidential library. Now, according to the Post, Qatar still wants to clarify the terms of this deal, including making it clear that the transfer of this jet was initiated by the Trump administration. None of this, though, is expected to derail this deal. The plane's already in the U.S., but it is sure to continue and to spark those legal concerns about this transfer, George.
It's all about those legal challenges.
Most of President Trump's tariffs could soon be on hold after a ruling yesterday by a three-judge panel at the Court of International Trade. They ruled unanimously that the president has overstepped his authority in his trade war. In a response, the White House said, quote, "It is not for unelected judges to decide how to properly address a national emergency," end quote. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to break this all down. Jill, good morning.
Good morning.
So what does this mean for President Trump's tariffs? Does this mean that they are off?
Well, it means that we have another chapter in the story. This story is not over yet.
Okay.
Because what this ruling does is it says it clamps down and says you've got 10 days to go through a bureaucratic process to take away these tariffs that were announced on April 2nd. Now, those were the broad 10% that went up to 145%. Other tariffs on steel, aluminum, and cars, those were done under a different law, and those remain in place. But the administration is going to appeal this. It could go up to the Supreme Court eventually. And so we're in flux still on the tariff story. That's where we are right now.
How is it going to affect businesses, do you think?
I think it does nothing for businesses because I think what happens is we are still operating under a cloud of uncertainty. If we all owned a business and we had to make decisions today, what would we do?
Yeah.
Right.
What will the outcome of these court cases be? Am I going to invest a capital in a new building here in the United States if these tariffs could get rolled back? And am I going to hire? You know, yesterday we had the release of the minutes from the last Federal Reserve meeting. And officials at the Fed are worried that this uncertainty around tariffs could lead to a rise in inflation, in the inflation rate, and also slow down the economy. So I think that until we have more certainty about either deals or the rollback of some of these tariffs, businesses are stuck. It is as clear as mud, as they say.
This is so complicated. It's an octopus turned into a tree. All right, what about consumers and investors?
You know, it was funny because someone said to me, oh my God, is this great? Then now I can go buy a car and it'll be cheaper. No, not necessarily. Prices are not going down for consumers. Again, we don't have clarity. From the investor side, there's been a fascinating trend that's gone on, which is I think a lot of investors are looking past tariffs. You know, there is a trade acronym going around Wall Street, and it must be driving the president crazy. It's called the taco trade. Have you heard of it?
No.
Nope.
Trump always chickens out.
Oh.
And this actual acronym is the position that many traders are taking. They are saying he will roll back these tariffs when the bond market moves against.
I don't know.
So when the
It's like, should we? I go back and forth on this. On the one hand, I think the taco stuff is very funny and very good. On the other hand, I'm like, should we be playing with fire? Should we be playing with fire and antagonizing the beast like this? Also, on the other hand, I'm thinking to myself, why don't we use this to other stuff? You know, it's Taco Thursday, baby. Just weaponize the taco stuff, which clearly is working, on Israel. Just be like, dude, I have it on good authority. Benjamin Netanyahu thinks you're a bitch. He thinks you're a whole ass bitch. Okay, capital B. He thinks you are terrified of him. He says, I won't do any ceasefire. That's what he told me. He told me, Ron Dermer said you're a bitch, dude. Think about that. I'm just saying. Maybe we could use the weaponize the taco thing for something more productive, right? He's like, he doesn't think you will be able to facilitate a ceasefire. He said, he told me personally, he talks shit behind your back. He's like, once you leave the room, he's like, damn, Trump is so stinky. Damn, Trump ain't got no motion. He said he liked Joe Biden more. He told me he was more worried about Joe Biden working tirelessly around the clock for a ceasefire, that type of shit. You know what I mean? I'm out of options, man. I'm out of options. Okay. You know, do you have a better alternative? I don't think so. Do you have a better alternative other than manipulating the fragile ego of Donald Trump? Yeah. I'll end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. I'll end the genocide in Gaza in 24 hours. No, the you won't. Taco shit, dude. I want Taco to be Trump always commits openly. Trump always commits openly. Yeah. Not Trump always chickens out. That's what I want.
Stock market moves against him. And so we are seeing stock futures rise right now in the pre-market. But what is clear is investors believe the tariff story is in the rearview mirror. We don't know if they're right yet. We just know that that's what they think.
Never heard that phrase.
Taco trade.
Trump always chickens out.
I hope Trump doesn't hear about that.
Yes.
He knows about it. It's from a Financial Times columnist.
All right.
Dr. Navarro, welcome back to the programme, sir. First of all, I think we've got to get into the ruling overnight. Have you spoken to the president? And ultimately, what's his reaction to what we heard?
Haven't spoken to the president yet, but
this is the libbest you've ever been, maybe. Because I'm desperate, man. I'm desperate, okay? I'm desperate. What are you talking about? It's literally the same reason why I was like, look, man, I don't really care. Obviously, it's a bribe that Qatar gave Donald Trump a $400 million plane. Like, it's not, that's a bribe. Like, everybody knows that's a bribe. This is just how he operates. If that bribe moved him even marginally in the direction of a ceasefire in Gaza, like, I don't care. It's awesome. I'll fly it. I'll fly to Qatar right now, you know, and kiss the feet. Do you see what I mean? It's more so coming from a place of desperation rather than joking. You're spot on that anything that drives him insane is great. Yeah, I mean, that's funny. It's funny that it drives him insane, but it's also like when you're that desperate, you'll use whatever you can to your advantage. Why is the view count so low? What's going on? I started early today, and when you start early, it just like cooks. I've trained my audience to basically watch me after 11 a.m. And instead I started at 10, which implies that it probably doesn't send out notifications to many people. To many people on Twitch. Anyway, let's keep
but
going.
I've spoken to people who have spoken to the president. Look, we're in a situation now. Big picture here is IEPA. We were using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. There's no question that there's an economic emergency with respect to both uses that we had. One is we are in a world where China has killed over 1 million Americans with fentanyl poison, and we took this step to stop that. We will continue to press on that. At the same time, we invoked that rule to stop what has been 20 million illegal aliens streaming into our country, driving down wages, taking jobs away. That's an economic emergency. And on top of that, the world continues to steal about $1 trillion a year as measured by the trade deficit. And that's an economic emergency because it's transferring our wealth abroad. So we think we have a strong case. Yes, we will immediately appeal and try to stay the ruling. But at the same time, the court, interestingly enough, basically said we were right, just use different rules and laws. So nothing has really changed here in that sense. We're still, as we speak, having countries call us and tell us they want a deal. So these deals are going to happen.
I want to close my eyes for a moment and imagine, like, I want to put myself in the shoes of a guy who hears Peter Navarro say this and then believes it. You know what I mean? When virtually everything that you can observe is going against everything that these guys say. Like, I want to know what kind of, like, who is the type of dude that watches and goes, hell yeah, they're doing so many deals, dude. They're doing so many deals. America's on the up and up, dude. Trump brought in $100 gazillion, dude. And you're like, Dad, that's not a real number. You just heard that on television. Like, what? Who told you this? Nah, you don't understand. America's on the up and up. It's the hottest it's ever been. Everyone on Facebook is unironically that guy. React to the necessary conversation. What's that? Like, who's listening to this and going, yep, sounds good to me. sounds like we're winning, okay? Big time. At this point, there is like, it's gotten to a point where it's like hard to, I don't know. Like, what is the purpose of all of this? They just lie about everything, like all the time with great frequency. And I guess people kind of believe it. You know, people just believe it. They want to believe it, so they believe it. We're moving into a new formation. We're moving into a new formation where it's just like AI, cults. Politics is just cult-like. It doesn't matter. No more interest in the truth whatsoever. even when things directly impact you. But I guess you can always lie, and then once push comes to shove, and once like you start recognizing the impact of these statements, the impact of the actual harm, once you actually recognize the real harm that you're experiencing from these decisions, well, then by that point, they'll move on to the other thing. They'll move on to another thing to get mad about and redirect your attention to something else.
Happen. So that's kind of where we're at. And it's troublesome here because if you look broadly at the pattern, we've got courts in this country who are basically engaged in attacks on the American people. The president ran on stopping the fentanyl poisoning, stopping international trade unfair practices from stealing our factories and jobs. And courts keep getting in the way of that. The courts get in the way of our trying to deal with the border issues. Now they're getting in the way of our trying to deal with the fentanyl crisis. And that's where we stand here. And I think part of what's going to be important about this ruling demonstrates yet again to the American people that the judiciary in this country has been weaponized in ways which are contrary to their interests.
Well, Peter, you would have heard a lot of people come on this program and ultimately say you still have tons of options. And you alluded to one of them. You will, of course, appeal. But could you describe what you might do in the interim, the way you might pursue your ultimate objective anyway, with the tools you have still available to you?
I'm going to let Jamison Greer, the USTR, inform you on that, and you'll be hearing from him soon on that. But I mean, look, any trade lawyer knows there's just a number of different options we can take. If you look at the kind of things we've already done, it kind of gives you a roadmap on that. There's all sorts of numbers out there. There's 122, there's 301, there's 232, there's 338. There's all sorts of things we can do well within the law. But look, we think that what we've done already is perfectly appropriate. So that's why the appeal will take case. But, you know, it's like, interestingly enough, I was scheduled to come on the program today to talk about the bond market and the big, beautiful tax bill. But there is a bridge to.
Oh, I love that they're calling it the big, beautiful tax bill. Again, another point for the complete devolution, the complete regression of American political discourse, American politics in general. It's just so, it's signaled to the dumbest guy you know. Everything that this administration is doing is signaling to the stupidest person you've ever encountered, okay? Incredible, fantastic, phenomenal. I was here to talk about the big, beautiful bill, but we got numbers. We got numbers we can use.
To that. And if I may, we have a situation where the bond market, we've seen like a 50 basis point increase in yields in the 10-year since April 2nd. And a lot of the hysteria around the big, beautiful tax bill centers on the Congressional Budget Office scoring that bill in a way which says there's going to be a $3.7 trillion addition to America's national debt over the next 10 years. And so, of course, you got to finance that, and that drives interest rates.
Yeah. Obviously, one might ask, why do we have this? Why is this bill supposed to add to the deficit? I don't understand. I thought Republicans cared about the deficit. I thought they were deficit hawks. Oh, that's right. It's because it's a massive wealth transfer. Once again, it is supposed to offer ginormous tax cuts to the wealthiest in American society. And in order to make up for that, in order to make up for the trillions of dollars in tax cuts, you have to take money away from someone. And that money that they're taking away from people is the working poor. Many of them are in the Trump base, as a matter of fact. Many of them who rely on Medicare, as a matter of fact. 8 to 12 million kicked off of Medicare coverage, SNAP benefits taken away from tens of millions of people with children. Fantastic stuff overall for the working poor. Get back to work and enslave yourselves. You're able-bodied enough is the attitude. Very cool. Very cool to do this, I think, in America. Big, beautiful bill. Gonna be awesome. Can't wait to win and win harder and win more. I'm just so tired of winning.
Up and heads explode. When in fact, if you do the math properly and you look at the history of the CBO forecast, you actually see about a $5 trillion swing to a $2 trillion.
Sorry, Medicaid, not Medicare. Did I say Medicare? I meant Medicaid.
Surplus from the bill. And I'd like to just walk you through the math there. It's like the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, historically has been very bad at estimating impacts of tax bills. In the 2017 tax cut that President Trump did, they got that totally wrong. They underestimated the GDP growth by a full percentage point. And what that does, if they make that same mistake here, which they have done, when you add that, that's about $2 trillion of additional revenue because you got greater economic activity. And then,
Peter, you also have the revenue from the tariffs, which I saw your opinion piece in The Hill. I just want to get back to the I just want to get back to the tariffs because you don't have that revenue.
Well, that's another $2 trillion.
If you don't have the legal authority to use it, though.
That gets us.
But can I just ask? You mentioned Ambassador Greer. We're going to hear from him soon. Are we going to hear from USTR about the bridge, potentially what John was talking about? If you can't use IEPA, potentially you're going to come out, the administration say we're going to use 122 in the interim.
Well, the court did in some sense tell us to do that, which was interesting. But look, here's the thing. Fentanyl, people need to wrap their heads around the fact that every day here in America, people die because communist China puts 50-gallon drums full of these chemicals that come over to the Mexican cartels and then are made not just into fentanyl. They use the fentanyl to spike heroin, to spike methamphetamines, to spike ecstasy, and they're even putting it in prescription drugs like Xanax and Valium. And people are dying. It's been over 1 million people, 1 million Americans. And it's an economic emergency because a lot of those people are prime age working force here in America. So this kind of court ruling, the judge, look, the lead.
Does anyone believe that the Trump tariff stuff is for fentanyl? I feel like obviously they wanted to do this in a way where they could declare a national emergency so that they could have even more power. Because normally a lot of the tariff stuff, especially if it's directional, especially if it's like industry specific, is usually left up to the executive authority. Congress has historically allowed the executive office, the White House, to make decisions on tariffs. But Donald Trump knows, or at least Donald Trump's advisors know, that he can't make these broad declarative, and not industry-wide, but broad declarative tariffs on every single country in the way that he has. Obviously, as the courts also have ruled, you do not have that kind of power, right? And therefore he had to find, I guess his advisor to find a devious way to give him this awesome power, this extraordinary power, right? And part of that comes from declaring things a national emergency. If you declare something a national emergency, then the White House has more power than it did prior, okay? So in order to declare something a national emergency, or in order to use the tariffs as as a weapon to wield, he basically said like, oh, this is the fentanyl. It's because of fentanyl. Fentanyl's coming over the border, and that is a national emergency. Too many people are dying because of fentanyl. And then he turned around and said, that's why we're tariffing Canada. And I feel like when he just did it on Mexico, it was one thing where most people are like, yeah, it is coming from the southern border, even though ironically, a lot of the tariffs are, a lot of the fentanyl is coming from China by way of regular points of entry, okay, through, normal routes of commerce, okay. But having said that, when he was like, oh, that's why we're actually putting a tariff on Canada because of fentanyl, everyone was like, what the f do you mean? Like, it's just, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. It doesn't, like, I don't know why he's even, like, who believes this? Who's like, yeah, this is actually a great way to deal with the fentanyl crisis by adding tariffs, by basically slapping a sales tax, a broad sales tax on all consumer goods. We are combating fentanyl.
But if the court said, if the ruling said, Peter, and we've been talking about this, page 34, 35, they say, basically, you are in your right if you use Section 122. Why didn't you guys do that from the beginning?
Well, Section 122 only gives you 150 days. So there's your answer right there.
So, Section 122, if you use this now for 150 days, would it be a bridge to 301 or a bridge to 232? What are you thinking more long term?
You can be the strategist on that, but those are the kinds of thoughts. And look, if anybody thinks this caught the administration...
That's not... You guys are throwing up question marks, but again, the president has, by Congress and through precedent, broad powers on directing trade. Okay. So the question that they're asking Peter Navarro here is not the wrong one, where it's like, you already have these powers. Why wouldn't you use those powers? Why are you instead trying to do this unconstitutional way of, or this illegal way of applying these broad tariffs across the board? And I guess it's maybe a trial balloon. I really don't have a good answer for it. I think that's they didn't use it because they didn't know. No. That's not true. I don't think that. Like, yes, Trump is stupid and Peter Navarro is stupid. A lot of people at the top are stupid, but they have actual advisors. Stop. They have actual advisors. Please. Especially Republicans. If you think Republicans don't have devious methods, no shot, dude. No shot. This is all they do. Like Donald Trump right now is following through on 40 years, almost 40 years of the Republican agenda. It's not out of pocket at all. Every action that he has made in terms of creating this unilateral power structure in the hands of the executive office, in the hands of the White House, that is not new, okay? That is just a continuation of the unitary executive theory. It's not, this is following the Heritage Foundation's project that has been around and been implemented slowly but surely for almost 40 years. This is not new. It's not new at all. And I think part of the reason why they're doing this stuff, part of the reason why the Trump administration is doing this stuff is because they think this is a great way to expand on the power of the executive office by simply calling something a national emergency and then behaving this way and then testing out the courts to ensure that they have this kind of broad sweeping power. I think that's the reason why they're doing it. Because once again, if you think that the Trump administration doesn't have advisors like Heritage Foundation guys that aren't constantly looking at different ways in which to increase the power of the executive office, you're wrong. The one thing that I believe they're too incompetent to do is just like set up a false flag to greatly expand on the powers of to greatly push for, I don't know, some kind of new war or additional emergency powers that allow them to start deporting American citizens, stuff like that. I think they're too incompetent to set up like a psyop or a false flag. I don't want to make predictions on that though. Who knows? But right now, when I look at like the way that they operate, it's pretty basic. They're kind of blundering into a lot of these positions. They're trying to just basically hip check their way into this agenda. One of the greatest examples of this was what happened with Mahmoud Khalil. Like they are basically working with groups like Beitar. They could have started this process by going after like actually undocumented migrants or documented citizens that weren't legal permanent residents that had said a lot of violent stuff. You know what I mean? Even though it's still constitutionally protected, they could have at least like massaged this in a way where the public sentiment would not be broadly against this kind of anti-1A, anti-First Amendment initiative. But they didn't do that. They just worked with Beitar and thought that Mahmoud Khalil, for example, was on a student visa. They didn't even realize you had a green card and an American wife with a child on the way. Like, these are major mistakes that you're making that are actually very consequential when you're trying to work within the confines of the pre-existing system and moving that in the direction of tyrannical fascism. That kind of uncertainty and that kind of incompetence is basically the only silver lining in this administration that hopefully gives me a little bit more courage and a little bit more confidence that they might not be able to implement all of their desires, because I certainly do not believe in the Democratic Party as far as like resisting against these initiatives that the Trump administration is implementing. They're basically failing due to the awesome power that they have, due to the fact that they have greatly miscalculated how much support they have for a lot of the things that they're doing. And we shall see.
Administration by surprise, think again, okay? Because you could see in the oral arguments where those judges were going, and the lead judge in this, I mean, the problem with that court, it's such an obscure court, but it's consistently been globalist, pro-importer, giving us bad rulings. The lead judge there ruled against the 232s originally and had to get overturned by the appeals court. So that gives you an idea of the bias against the president's tariff policy right on that court. But I think the big picture here is we've got a very strong case with IEPA, but the court basically tells us if we lose that, we just do some other thing. So nothing's really changed. I want to say this to the world. You're cheating us. We're coming after you. Deal, and let's make this right, because ultimately what's at stake here is the global international environment getting in a way where it's fair to America, and thereby, if it's fair to America and we restructure this thing in a way, we'll have just more stability in terms of financial flows and capital and everything like that.
Dr. Navarro.
Wildly out of balance now.
Hasan Reactions is one of the best ones in the React channel.